I'm really excited today because this series started in April when COVID hit. And like many others, there was webinars and sessions. And I just thought, what can I do for some of my small business clients and for some of the people I mentor? I thought it'd be really nice to have more conversational rather than just me as a talking head and a webinar. And just bring in people in my community and colleagues. And so I'm really excited about today. So in April, we did leadership, layoffs, and love. Ooh. And, you know, I was like, what's love got to do with it in the workplace? But it's everything. And then we went into May was mental health month. So we talked a lot about, you know, stress and mental health. And then this month, I was trying to figure it out. And then I've obviously, George Floyd and those after, and then the pandemic, everything that has been going on, I thought, you know, let's have some real conversations. And because I do have colleagues in my community that I wanted to support as well. And so this is not tokenism. This is, you know, these are real conversations about being human and real people that I know and that I want to support. And how can I and my community and in the workplace, how can we also support this? So we're going to have a lot to try to pack into a short period of time. For those who are just joining for the first time, I'm Helen Patterson, and I'm the founder of Life Works Well. And I help small businesses that are scaling create heart-centered and high-performance cultures. And I just love the work I do. It's all about the people, and I've been talking about human first for a long time. So I feel like I really need to live that as well. And so I am so excited about our guest today. And let me just make sure I can move. This is when I have trouble. What? Oh, there we go. Hopefully you can see the screen okay. Anyway, Jackie Porter. I met Jackie actually several years ago. And the first time I met her was at a retreat, a woman's incubator. And so impressed with her. And then we came across each other again when she spoke as a keynote at Company of Women conference.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I came up to you and I'm like, hey, I met you recently and I love the work you're doing. And so I just thought, wow, you know, I've been watching you for the last few years and now we are part of an incubator together. We're in different groups, but we do learn together. And I've just watched you grow and I just love what you do. And it's so important, financial planning and finances. And so for those on the call that inspire to be, you know, an entrepreneur or even not, how is you, especially when I think about my mentorship that I do for young people, you know, how do you start out thinking about this as well? So we can talk a little bit about that, your work, how you support others. This is sort of going to go in a different few directions. We will have a back and forth a little bit and open it up. And I know you're on top of the government updates. And so we have a lot to chat about. So hopefully at the end, you have some advice for the young entrepreneurs too that are here today and some Q&A. And so the other thing, I always put quotes, and the last couple sessions I've done, I haven't been sharing my screen properly. So I've been talking to a blank thing and my quotes don't appear, but I really think when I was thinking about it, because, you know, talking about finances a bit today too, and it's, you know, for me, a lot of what I felt was my education was so important, but because I lived in poverty and I had to kind of put myself through school, and it was all about education and then, you know, saving and getting that financial ability to have the freedom to choose. So I thought this quote was really good. So maybe we'll touch on that a little bit. And then Jackie, I'm so excited, like award-winning, you know, you've been featured on a million blogs and on CBC, and you really are an expert in your field. And I know I'd like to talk a little bit about your primary audience. I think it's mainly women, but if you have, you know, other clients as well and small business, but you know, how you got there. And I love that. I read an article where you had an opportunity to use your voice. And you know, the whole white male men thing. And so when we get to the other section on what's happening in the world, I think if you could touch on that.
I'm happy to. I saw that you asked if I was comfortable. I'm like, well, now that I've shared it with thousands.
Yeah, exactly. And single Yeah, and single by chance. I like that. That I really want to know more about all of this
Yes, and
this
it's by choice
journey.
or chance, and I'm very picky about that because women are single by choice or chance. And the choice part, sometimes women say they're single by choice and chance.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And it's okay, right? That's the
No,
thing.
it's totally okay. It's totally
Yeah.
okay.
So some stats I always share too, and then we're going to get into more like so small and medium sized businesses, and that's my primary client group as well. And that, you know, they are a huge majority in Canada. You know, there are a lot. And the other thing is, though, a lot of them fail. So
Mhm.
you might have some advice on like planning individually and as businesses. How can they succeed? But they create jobs. I have some new people on my team that actually are here today too, and just supporting others. Like it's a great opportunity to help the economy, right? So you can always read these later. I send this out. I just thought it sort of helps us think about, wow, you know, I had no idea when I do a little bit of research for the topic, and just the importance of thinking about finance. If you do want to start a business, like how do you go about it and keep
Can I insert a fun
successful?
fact in there?
Sure.
Women are leading the way. We are actually the largest group of entrepreneurs, fastest rising group of entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah. And last session I had Starshima on, and she is amazing woman in California, and we had some women business stats, because honestly, for all of these sessions I haven't had a male. I had one sign up for the creative, but he didn't show up. So I'm honored today to have Chase Kelly with us, who is actually
Oh,
going to be working with
fantastic.
me as our marketing assistant for his co-op placement. So welcome, Chase. And so he wanted to kind of get a feel. He just started this week. So, and I think Taylor's on the phone too, on the line too. But so really, it's been interesting about the topics that I've been speaking about, that, you know, I don't know if it's men are just not into the conversation, or they're not comfortable with the whole emotional intelligence pieces. Like there's been a lot of that. So I'm glad you're here, Chase. Thank you.
Yeah,
Support us women.
we're glad you're here too.
Yeah, diversity, right? There we go.
Yeah.
So you can get a hold of Jackie, and again, I'll send that out. And then another little quote by Jackie Porter. Remember, the key to securing your financial future is thinking long-term and committing to your goals no matter what. I took that from one of your articles in your blog. So anyway, I'm going to stop my share so we can have you come out. And, you know, we can stop and pause for questions here and there. So just like, so what brought you to, I know a little bit about your background, but for those here, what brought you to deciding about the financial planning and your journey to where you are today?
Well, you know, I kind of think of myself as the accidental entrepreneur, the accidental financial planner, because this actually was not a field I grew up learning about. I knew nothing about financial planning, and so I got into this industry completely and wholly by accident, as a second career. So what happened, you know, what kind of led me to being interested in finance was just really being born out of poverty, coming from very, very little. You know, one of the reasons I co-wrote Single by Choice or Chance is because when I was 16, I became suddenly single. My mother passed away when I was 16, and she was a very, even though we didn't spend that much time together, she was a huge force in my life. She was somebody who, from the time I was about 6 or 7, always talked to me about financial independence. She was always the person who said to me at 7, always rely on a man, never rely on a man, sorry, always have your own. And she was a living proof of that. She was, you know, she worked 3 jobs. She had a full-time job and 2 side hustles. And, you know, she really showed me the path to, you know, being somebody who has a strong work ethic and having a can-do attitude and just entrepreneurship. She was someone who I think if she lived in another life would have been an entrepreneur, because she was an entrepreneur. She always had entrepreneurial things going. Another quick fact that'll totally age me for the audience that we have going right now in this, I see all these young faces, is you may recall Tupperware, the Tupperware business, Coppercraft. My mother had all of those things that she was doing. And, you know, really, I joke about this, but it was true because child labor laws were what they were, whatever she was involved in, and because we didn't have like babysitting services, I often would accompany her on all of her side hustles. So I got a chance to see up close and personal what it was like to be an entrepreneur. So I was grateful for all of that, because when she did suddenly pass away, well, she didn't suddenly pass away, she passed away of cancer, but when she did pass away, I was in a position that I felt really confident being able to support myself. So I did work 3 jobs, put myself through high school, university. I'm not going to lie, it was a grind, but my immigrant mom's work ethic really rubbed off on me, and I knew how to survive. So I knew how to do that. So fast forward many years, many years into the future, I land my first full-time job. One job. It was a huge milestone in my mind, just working one job at a time. And I was there for 5 years and then got transitioned because the company was going through a transition. So I was downsized from that job. I actually chose to leave. But I'd been really good over the course of my life at saving and putting money away and stretching a dollar because I had no choice. So you learn things that you have to learn, right, when you have no choice. So, it's funny. I kind of feel like I actually accidentally came into the advice industry as well, because people saw me as a young person living on my own with roommates, but living on my own, paying my bills, and I seemed to be doing okay, right? So they asked me for advice when I was in my late teens and early 20s, thinking I knew something. And the truth is, Helen, the only thing I really knew was how to work hard. That's it. But people saw me as someone that they could look up to and ask for advice, which I thought was just fascinating, right? Anyway, fast forward, as I said, to getting downsized. A friend of mine recommended me to a financial planner. And that was actually the first time I heard the term financial planner. I'm like, what's that? She was telling me, somebody you can have help you with your money. So by then I was just so enthralled. So I sit down with this financial planner at our first meeting, and it just so happens that the person who was speaking to me about money was a woman. And to top it off, she was a woman of color. So this was like a unicorn at the time, right? So that intrigued me. And here we are. And by now I'm 26, having my very first money conversation. And so, that just completely opened my eyes, because one of the most impactful things she said to me in that meeting was that money could work for me. She was like talking to me about money working for me. And you have to understand, by that time, it was like 10 years of me like at the grind. I already felt so old and so tired that I was in fact just so excited to learn that, money could work for me, because that's just not something like, first of all, I never had a money conversation with anybody, not least of which my immigrant mom. It's something like money was never something we spoke about, but we did speak about working hard and taking pride in working hard. But to have the idea of having money work hard for me, like revolutionary. And so as she was talking to me, my mind went somewhere else. I was just like, I need to know every single thing I could about making money work hard for me. I need to do this for myself. I really desperately wanted to have financial security for myself. I just didn't want to live like this for the rest of my life. So as she was talking to me about money working hard for me, I said, tell me something. How can I get into this industry? I really need financial security, and I need to know everything I could about that. And so that really started my foray into this industry. And, I learned everything I could. And then I started to realize, like, there's so many people like me that look like me, women who have never had a chance for people to think we deserve to have a money conversation, right? So, I often see this in my practice, talking to women who come and get referred to me, that they've had conversations with financial professionals like myself where they felt like they were being talked down to, or they were being ignored, and they were speaking to the man in the relationship. And, I've experienced that. I've seen that, you know what I mean? And that's a form of discrimination, right? And so I just kept thinking to myself, all the times in my life that if I would have been able to have a money conversation with somebody, it would have made all the difference in my life. It would have just made the difference. Just, what to do with the small estate that I received from my mother, all these different conversations where I felt like nobody wanted to have that conversation with me.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm just going to pause there for a second, because in listening to you, and I have my daughter who's just turned 20, and my son's 13. And, you know, similar background to you as far as having to have that grind and put myself through. You know, obviously our skin color is the big difference. We're going to chat about that later, because it's interesting to me though that, you know, first of all, the female, and Chase, you know, we're talking about this a bit, but I think it's good because next generations can understand, you know, just traditional role models. Like I always said, I don't want to be the same as my mom and dad, right? I'm not just going to sit. I mean, she worked hard too. She was kind of the mom and the dad, but that's another story for another time. But yeah, working hard and taking care of 5 kids and like doing all the cleaning. And I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I never had the fun. We never talked about money. And Juanita is on the call. She grew up with me, and we never talk, you know, we didn't have those money conversations, and schools don't have it either. And I know that Chase does his own, like he's getting into markets and stuff. So good for him, like trying to understand how you can accumulate, because it really does open doors, right? To be able to have ability to, you know, maybe take those courses that are going to increase your education.
That's
so
right.
I love hearing about your journey, and thank you for that, because it is very personal. And, you know, losing your mom and then having to take on and, you know, take over and be the mom, you know, and just, it's admirable that, and that finance it's something that just people don't talk about. So
Not
is your audience, all your clients women, or do you also support small business owners?
I support everyone. I mean, I'm about empowerment, and
Yeah.
I find that, you know, there's lots of men who say to me, you know, we need to be empowered too, because sometimes they're not always the financial decision makers in their home. It just kind of depends on the dynamics. It's just largely statistically women tend to lack confidence around money, and they don't necessarily feel empowered around money. And typically when women, and I've been in this situation too, things I don't feel confident about, I tend to abdicate. So I'll abdicate responsibility either to a financial professional, even if I don't know what they're talking about. And if they talk down to me, I'll just listen because I'm a good girl. So I won't, you know, talk back or what have you. Or I might abdicate my responsibility in a relationship. So I'm married, I don't know anything going on with the finances at home. I don't even know where my assets are located. And, you know, it costs women when we don't know, and we don't understand, you know, what our opportunities are. We don't understand what the risks are. And, you know, in a scenario like, for example, you're working with an advisor and you have no idea how they're being paid. You don't understand how you're doing. A lot of women just say to me, I just want to know if I'm going to be okay. And, you know, rate of returns are important, but how does this all fit into my overall financial planning strategy to pay off debt, have enough at retirement? They want to see all their numbers and they want to understand them. And they don't necessarily feel sometimes if they're with an advisor that they are with that hasn't taken the time to explain things to them, then it puts them at a disadvantage at being empowered around their finances. And it's the same in relationships. Like if you end up in a relationship where you have no idea where the money's located, you have no idea how the finances are being managed in a divorce, it could open your eyes in not such a good way. Maybe you're in debt and you don't know, maybe the finances are being mismanaged, or maybe you'll struggle to locate funds as all of a sudden you're in a divorce because you didn't know where they were invested with or where it was in the first place.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for that, because I can tell you a story about when my dad passed. No will and no idea, right? So my mom again, and that was a lesson, and that probably what, you know, also these things drive you, right? So having student loans that I had to repay, you know, and I had to like make sure I took care of that. So those life things happen. It's like if you had known ahead of time, like, you know, get the will, know where everything is, all the bank accounts. And so, and same thing with my mother who has dementia, getting her into a home. And I had to like dig out, where's all the bank stuff? And I'm still like working on it years later because I'm finding, okay, this should be closed, this bank. And so I recommend a binder. Someone else told me that it's like, get all that stuff. And for my household too, because, you know, we both have been very strong professionals, but
hang out, because I'm actually in the process of creating something I call a legacy toolbox. It'll be out in September to host all of your important documents for your aging parents, for yourself, having a place to put everything all in a box. So I'm
amazing.
So
Sounds great.
Oh, That really sounds great. Someone just said sounds great. I don't know who
Yeah,
that was,
I'll
but
be,
I
I'll
know
be,
Allison might be on too. And
yeah, so
Allison's a colleague I
get
went
on my
to.
mailing list, and I'll be sure to make sure you
Yeah.
get it when it comes out, because I'm really excited for all the reasons you've just said. Is the reason I
Well,
created
and that's the thing. We could go on and on and on. So let's take a step back and talk a little bit about, okay, you help small businesses,
it. Right,
right, with their planning, individual and, business.
correct.
And so, you need to get all that set up and organized. And my new team is getting to know that I need lots of help organizing. I'm getting there. So, we have our strengths, right?
Absolutely.
But how did you help them manage? I mean, when the pandemic hit 3 months ago here, and you primarily, I assume, is GTA or Ontario, but what were you hearing? How were you helping them? What were you doing to sort of, I mean, I follow you, but just for us
Yeah,
today,
yeah,
like what was happening? I'd just like to know.
absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I was just checking in with people. I was just making a lot of telephone calls out to people. I sent out a letter to all of my clients, because it just so happened I had kind of gotten word from people I knew in the government that there was going to be a lockdown, and they probably helped me get organized, because they told me this a week before the government actually locked things down. So I was able to kind of get geared up, send out communication to clients to say, here's what is happening with your investments. Here's, what, like, I think the expectations are in the short term. Things are probably going to be bumpy for a little while, and to reach out if they needed me. So that helped a lot, because it just stopped too many phone calls coming in, because I kind of gave them a State of the Union before everything started to happen. And then I just started reaching out to people, to individual clients, to see what was going on, how things were going. I had one client, actually, she was on a program I'm running right now, but she was talking about going through a divorce during a pandemic, going through a separation, changing homes. Her home actually sold like 5 days before the pandemic hit, and she had to move. And, so I was just supporting her soon to be former spouse. I've been talking to clients who needed understanding. I was working with their accountants to figure out what benefits they'd be entitled to, just sort of checking in on kind of where they were in terms of cash flow, if there was any support I could offer. I think that the key thing about all of this is just checking in with people, because, everybody's going through their own version of COVID and, life during COVID, and it doesn't all look the same. And so it's just kind of finding out what kind of support people need, and if I can be of assistance, either providing them with information they may need to get to their accountant, or just checking in with them. Sometimes it's just getting some reassurance that maybe their account isn't anywhere near as bad as they thought it was going to be. That's actually shocking to people. They're like, you mean I'm like, no, you're actually, some clients are actually doing well, depending on how they were invested, and definitely just checking in, just so they kind of know where they're at. And I think people just like to know you're there.
That's great. Yeah. And so I will send the website out to the mailing list as well as those online. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to,
The other
yeah.
thing I was going to say is I also, in the midst of that, just started a live series on COVID and COVID issues, right? Personal and financial. And so each week on Wednesdays at 5, I do a COVID series, and I talk to clients. I've talked to clients on there. I've talked to different entrepreneurs on there, just trying to find out how they're coping during COVID, all the issues, all the different benefits we've gone through, and I've explained them, and I've talked to people who are receiving them to just kind of get a sense of what that's like. I've had everybody on there.
Oh, I was on a couple times on Instagram, right?
Yes.
So yeah, and I am Jackie. No,
I'm Jackie Porter.
I am Jackie Porter. If you want to follow her, and it's in the slides. But just pause. I'm wondering if anybody had any questions so far. Oh, Chase. Okay, good.
Okay, am I unmuted? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello,
First of all,
Chase. Our
hi.
lone man. We're just gonna tell you how much we think you're awesome.
Thank you. So I had a question. During the start of this, how did you manage people's like worrying and like expectations about the whole like coronavirus like attacking their finances? Because the stock market dropped, and I'm sure a lot of people were afraid. So like, I just want to hear like your
Yeah,
mentality.
absolutely. I think sending out communication ahead of time, sending out really a State of the Union. And I tried to make sure that people had a sense of what was happening with the markets. I made sure they knew that I was going to be working remotely, but that they were going to be able to get in touch with me. I talked about what happened in the markets, why it was happening, what the expectations were, just kind of giving them a lay of the land, giving them a sense that yes, their portfolio, was going to be affected. But again, it's different. But, I tend to like to go more negative, so people are less surprised. But I was talking about the markets as a whole. I wasn't talking about a specific portfolio. I was talking that the markets were down 20-30%, and that they should expect that things were going to be bumpy for a while. I'd say at least 2 years. And just so people, I didn't want to sugarcoat anything, and in fact, like I said, I'd rather be more erring on the more conservative side than being too optimistic. But having said that, I when I spoke to people, I could be more optimistic, because then we could talk about specific strengths or weaknesses in their situation that we can address, right? And I think that's truthfully the best way to go, is just keep people informed and stay in touch. And that's kind of how you stave off worrying. As an advisor, the worst thing I could do is just hide from people and pretend things aren't happening. But people do that, right? And I think the best way, and this is just a resilience technique overall, whatever is going on, be upfront about it, be transparent about it, and meet it head on, so that people can, get to their real fears and concerns, right? So Chase, one of the things you should know about me is I call myself a financial confidant, because people need to be able to speak their financial truths to me, and I need to also speak my financial truths to them. So one of the reasons I share my story is simply so that people know that they can trust me, right, with their story. And so, 'cause how am I going to ask you everything about you, your net worth, how much you make, blah, 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 if you know nothing about me, right? So I share my story of coming from nothing, creating my own 7-figure net worth out of nothing, being the person that was talked down to, so that people know what, who they're speaking to.
Right. That's awesome. Thank you for that answer.
Very welcome.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thanks for asking that, Chase. I think it's great that you're on, all of you, to think about starting younger, like Katie, who just turned 20, as I said, and we're getting the taxes and RSP room, and she likes saving. She's like a saver. She doesn't want to spend too much, although she does, but it's good. I feel like that's good. Yeah. So, I wanted to shift gears a bit, if that's okay. And I know, the last month with, the news and George Floyd, his, visceral, like this terrible witnessing to his death online is like killing, basically. And it's so interesting, because I wrote a blog about it, and I've been on my journey of educating and learning and unlearning, and I've always felt I'm an advocate of human rights, but we all still have a lot to learn. And I'm reading some of the literature that again, I should have been doing that already, but I thought, like, how do you think, how do you recommend that people get involved? What are you doing? How have you worked with clients to really, open up about it and not be afraid? Because I think the thing is, people sometimes don't want to speak up because they're afraid they're going to say something that's inappropriate. How have you been managing too? And I just wonder, like, I've been thinking about all my colleagues and friends that have been, impacted.
First and foremost, I think for me, the best way that I can speak to racial issues is continue to be me. And I think of myself as, someone who tries to be authentic. Sometimes I say things that people appreciate. Sometimes I say things that they don't, because I try to be real, right? And I think that's how you kind of show your humanity, is you're just real. And, sometimes that's got me in trouble in the industry, but I'm never going to be someone, and if you're working with me, I think that's what clients appreciate about me, is I'm real. So, and I think because I'm real, and because, I try to encourage them to have very honest, like for us to have honest conversations about everything, right? So it just creates, I find, an atmosphere that we can talk about taboo subjects like money, and then they can see me just for my humanity. Because here's the thing: first and foremost, I'm a human, and truthfully, the color of my skin is just a random genetic fact. That's all. So it's not like, I mean, I think when we talk about equality, I think all anybody ever wants is to be seen as a human being, not to be judged. And you know, I think the way we can cultivate honest conversations around these things is to not judge. Like, if you're coming into me and wanting to have a conversation about race, just kind of like finance, you should be able to feel you can tell me your truths. You can tell me some of the things, because I have biases too, right? So if we can talk on authentically to one another without shaming or blaming, which should happen the same with money, then we can have an honest conversation where both of us learn. I don't think ignorance, you should blame someone for not having it right if they're ignorant and they just don't know. Because we can't have honest conversations if we're going to shame and if we're going to blame people for simply not knowing. It's a different thing if you're a racist and you're arrogant and you have no willingness to learn. That's a completely different scenario. And I'll give you an example. And I shared this example when I wrote an article on being a person of color in the industry. And, you know, a few years ago, I was nominated to be a finalist for a Women of Influence Award in finance. And, you know, I was honored. I was the only person of color in the magazine, and that was exciting. And I remember the journalist calling me saying, you know, what do you want to say about the industry? What do you think is important? And again, I'm a real person. I'm an authentic person, and I'm not a different person. Like, if you see me on the street, you're not going to see a different person. You see the same person. I really pride myself in being aligned all the time. And so in any case, he asked me a question that I thought I was going to give an honest answer to. I didn't know any different. So I said to him, you know, I think that unfortunately, you know, one of the biggest things I'd love to change in the industry is the fact that the industry is still largely made up of old white men. And I thought I was just being factual. I didn't actually think I was being controversial. And so
it's the truth.
Yeah. Well, needless to say, I said as well that I thought that we needed to do more recruiting for people of color. We needed to do more recruiting for women, kind of things I thought were real basic, right? Because the math kind of works out this way, right? If you did the math, all the things I said were true. Anyway, I saw the magazine finally came out like a few weeks later, and I was on the third page, and they had all of the finalists, which were non-people of color. I was the only person of color. And I had this big, bold caption over my head that says, she thinks that the industry is still made up of old white men. And then where every other person who was in the magazine had a little blurb where they talked about the things they wanted to see change and all the different things, they put the same caption at the bottom of my name and face, saying she thinks that the industry is still largely made up of old white men. They didn't comment on it, nothing. It was so hurtful, Helen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did read about that. That's just not right.
Yeah. It was extremely hurtful. And, you know, at the time, like, I thought that every time I went into a room, it announced that I was like this troublemaking rebel because nobody supported what I had to say. It's not like they said this is true. They said nothing. They just made it look like, really what they did was they commoditized that moment rather than using it as an opportunity for us to actually have a real conversation about race and about the industry and you know, all the things that are happening that, you know, really and truly, I just did the math, and the math said it's mostly old white men, very few people that look like me, including being a woman. And, you know, 2016, unfortunately, people were not prepared to have that conversation. So I'm hopeful, just based on the number of calls I've received from clients, from, you know, stakeholders in the industry, I'm hopeful that this is a time and things will change.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, I felt that, you know, that whole situation dehumanized me and took away my humanity rather than, like I said, the conversations about making us both more human, even our
Yeah.
flaws. Because it was an uncomfortable conversation to have then. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have now. But then let's look past our discomfort and let's look at how we can change things, how we can move forward without shaming and blaming, because that's just a fact. That's what it is. But what do we want for the future? And same thing with finance, right? You know what? I talk to people who have gotten themselves in debt. They feel a lot of shame and they feel a lot of pain about their finances. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just look forward. What do you want things to look like as we plan your future, right? And that's all that matters.
I think that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that too, because I think it is like, this is a really significant time in history. And, you know, it's taken 400 years, but anyway, I think it's really important. And in the work that I do in my team in human resources, which I'm trying to shift the conversation to human relations versus us all being resources, right? Because that's, you know, when you think about it in the workplace, it is that bringing the humanity back in. And I've been on this journey for a while, so I appreciate you saying that, because, you know, as I believe we are here allies and we do want to be, and we want to just keep learning. So I think it's good to have these open conversations, because most people don't want to. And I one thing I wanted to ask you about was, because this whole shame thing, which I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and everyone here, if you haven't read Brene, you got to read Brene. Anyway, Dare to Lead and all her work is very, very helpful. And a lot of it is about the shame. And she has a great podcast too that has been digging deep into this. And I'm part of a book circle. We're doing work on some of the literature that's come out, Me and White Supremacy, White Fragility. And I recommend, though, that you need to, if you want to participate and be an ally, you need to do the work too, the internal work, and question your own, you know, bubble that you live in. And so we're here with you. And I thank you for opening up a little bit about that. And I thought that's kind of interesting, because the whole money conversation and the whole conversation about, you know, discrimination in any sense, right, is so uncomfortable for people. But that's what we have to do, right? We have to do it.
Yeah, there's nothing around it. We just have to talk about it, and the more we talk about it, and we can all just be students of that process, right?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So does anyone have any questions before we kind of move on to the next little topics?
Sure. I had a question. It was more about the finance stuff, but I want to say, first of all, thank you for sharing your experiences. I think that takes a lot of courage in itself. I really appreciate hearing that. But because I'm also in HR, so I don't have a huge finance background, but I really appreciate all the work you're doing, because especially for women, talking about encouraging them to embrace having more power with their own finances, because even in HR, a lot of our conversations, we talk about when you first get a salary job, and women are way less likely to negotiate for higher pay than men are. They'll more likely just take what they can get. So I want to ask, from your experience, what would you say is the first step, as many of us here too are really young and for starting our own careers? What's the first step we should take into empowering ourselves with our own finances, would you say?
I think first have that money conversation with yourself. Yeah, so, you know, having money conversations with other people are really important, your loved ones, you know, your boss, about money, and having money conversations with your friends, because you mentioned you're with HR. So sometimes we don't talk about money with our friends. And sometimes it's helpful if you're in HR and I'm in HR and we're talking about, how much do you make for what you do? How much do you make? How do you even know you're being paid fairly, right? If you can't have those kinds of conversations, and then make sure you advocate for yourself. But I would probably have a real come to yourself moment where you kind of go, what do I need to learn right now about finance? What are the top 3 things I need to learn this year about money that's going to move the needle for me? Is it around paying down debt? Is it around cash flow and budgeting? Like, make the priority list and then figure out how you're going to deal with it. Is it something you're going to deal with, or is it something you need help with?
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I usually, like, my big the thing that I struggle with is technical stuff, right? So I hate cars. I hate fixing cars. I hate stuff around the house that involve fixing. So my partner and I have this thing that we call, that's your department. So what are you going to outsource, and what will be your department for this year?
Nice. Yeah, I think for me, I look at talking about finances as very taboo, and I'm very worried about talking about, especially with other people in the same industry as I am, if I would be worried if I was making more or they were making more, and how we have that kind of conversation. So I definitely think my first step is going to have to unlearn that and feel more comfortable about having these authentic conversations.
Yeah, and do it with people you trust too. So maybe you wouldn't ask everybody in HR, but people that you have close relationships with in HR, and get some details on what should I be expecting to be paid. Because, you know, as you said, women struggle. And I did an Instagram live yesterday with some women who are going through working moms and COVID. So they're at home with their children. And there's a real disconnect around negotiating, because now you're in a scenario where your boss might expect more of you, your partner expects you to do the same amount of work and more, and you know, maybe your parents, your aging parents might. So how do you renegotiate all that? You need to advocate for yourself, and you sometimes need the language, right, on what to say. But it starts with how can I help myself, and who else can help me? And sometimes you have to have that same conversation with people around you. You know what, how can you support me? How can I support you? But you know, we need to help each other. But we as women, we tend to think only outside, how we can help others rather than how we can help ourselves. And we tend to support so many people that it's actually totally fine to look out for yourself and put that mask, like we're talking about the coronavirus, put that mask on you first before putting it on anybody else.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
That's amazing. And I think that it's, again, if we could learn that earlier and get into that mindset too of having those discussions. And Nicole, because we're in HR, you know, pay equity is another issue that we have to look at for any, like in Ontario, any company with 10 or more employees. And you know, you do discover sometimes those inequities amongst people, male, female positions, just negotiating mindset. Men, you know, like there's research on it, you know, MBA grads who the MBA grad was one to push for like 10K more, and what's the value of that over your whole lifetime career. It's fascinating stuff. I love that. So Jackie, any other questions from anybody else right now? Otherwise, I have another question I want to ask. Good. This has been very interesting. So I wasn't planning on asking about mindset. We'll get to that in a second, but I'm wondering if I'm just wondering about for someone that may want to start a business, you know, what would you recommend? Because there's a lot of, you know, people, they have their side hustle, right? They're working, and I find a lot of like the younger generations are, you know, they have their full-time job, but they always seem to have something else on the go. I found that interesting in when I was working at ADP Canada last, and all my colleagues, they all had a you know, a side gig or something. So do you have any advice about thoughts on the finance side and how to plan for it? You know, or when you are starting out, how to think about managing, you know, your money? Does it start with mindset? Like, just maybe touch on a little bit of that.
It does. Definitely. It starts with mindset, but you kind of have to set yourself up. Assume, especially when you're starting, like I think probably one of the biggest lessons most business owners have learned through this whole coronavirus. And this has been a lesson I've had to learn my whole life. And if you've been somebody who's grown up in poverty, you learn really early, which is just expect uncertainty. Just expect it and plan for it. So how can you, when you get into a business, you know, make sure you have enough cash flow to support the business. So make sure you have a really sound understanding of what all the expenses associated with setting up the business are going to be. And also, what is it going to cost you in your own personal life to live? And, you know, it might take 2 years for the business to get going. Do you have enough cash to support yourself and the business for 2 years? Have you done the math? You need to do the math. You can't get around the math, right? Do you have good credit, right? So what's your credit score? You can check out places like Borrowwell or Credit Karma to see what your credit is, so that if you needed to borrow, because if you're a side hustle, you might not have a business plan that's, you know, considered a legit biz, but where the government or anyone's going to lend you money. And so you might be responsible. And even sometimes when you are a solid business, just depending on what the bank thinks about you in terms of the viability of your business, they'll might want you to sign personally for debt for money they loan you. So how strong is your credit? Because the truth is, you tend to need other people's money to create wealth, right? We use other people's money to buy a home. We might use it to expand our business. You need other people's money. The other thing I would highly recommend is get a really good accountant that understands the area of business you're practicing in. So that will help you understand, well, what are you being realistic about what you think your expenses are going to be for the kind of business that you have? Is there anything you don't know about? Because taxes are the other thing you're going to have to plan for. So if you're projecting in your business plan that you're going to earn a certain amount of money, have you factored in taxes, HST, all those setup costs? Like you really want to get very, very clear on what the numbers are when you're starting your business. And, you know, here's the other piece, and this is the mindset piece as well. You know, a lot of people go into business, and now I'm talking more the personal services, thinking that, you know, I'm a really good baker or I'm a really good hairdresser. And, you know, skills and talent are not as important as you think in a business. Like often you have to think about, how are you going to be conducting that business? Is the business something like you could do on the internet? Here we are in this remote scenario, right? That if you had a personal care business that you weren't able to get clients in different ways, your business is going to be suffering even more now. So I usually, because I'm talking about expecting uncertainty, are there, like when you're setting up your business, are there businesses, complementary services you can offer in your business that'll create another stream of income? So you're not reliant just on one stream of income to keep the business going. So in HR, if you're in HR, is there a complementary business? Like, help me with this, Helen. Is there a complementary business an HR person can offer with HR that would create another income stream? Could it be online programs? Could it
Yes,
be?
yeah. So this is great. I actually should have talked to you a long time ago. No, but I think this is the thing. This is why it was so great to have you on too, because honestly, sometimes we just sort of fall into it, accidental entrepreneur or whatever you said. And by the way, I don't do math very well.
It's all good. You can do
Tech and math, I'm like, forget it. But
it's a team. That's all you need.
Well, that's it. And it is, I did a business plan and everything, but it is trying too, because, you know, I'm finding even recently what I thought could be a good income stream wasn't what I set out to do. And, you know, understanding it and doing that, but the setting yourself up for success, like doing the planning, like I know some people that are thinking about starting businesses and next careers, or, you know, this is, you know, often what happens once you've put your time in corporate, you may want to, or if you're younger, you may have it's like, if you can find the right resources, and like, so someone like you or others that actually do, you know, have programs to teach people and walk through, you know, processes that can kind of get you the thinking. And it's so important because we do underestimate everything. And being an entrepreneur is a grind. If you're wearing all the hats, right, you are trying to do it all, and you need to outsource and you need to get the help.
Absolutely. So build that team. And I think, you know, key members of the team is having a really good accountant, and stay away from the people who are what I consider filers of your taxes versus being advisors who can actually advise you on how much taxes will you pay each year, how should you structure yourself. They want to talk to you throughout the year, not just at tax time. That's a really big hint if you're with a filer or you're with a advisor. So have an accountant on your team, have a financial planner on your team, have a good lawyer, because setting up contracts when you're in business, especially if you're in partnerships, super, super important to have the right contracts in place. And you need a good banker. You need somebody actually that understands your business, that when you're ready to borrow money and make those telephone calls, because often I find women wait too late to actually expand their business. Their business could be doing well, and we want to have every single T crossed and every I dotted, and that usually it's too late. Your business is about to implode. You tend to need to ask for money sooner in your business to keep it going. So keep the lines of communication open with your banker, stay on top of your credit so that you're in the best position when you're ready to apply for money to expand your business. It's available to you.
That's great. I'll have to get those app names from you because I know my daughter's always, that's the other thing, is she's always looking up her credit score on some app. And I should really, I'll add that into the resources before I send them out because that's really helpful. So yeah, we're getting already close to the time. This has been a great conversation. So I thought I'd just open up for any other last questions. We do have Jackie for few more minutes. Oh, good, Chase, because this is a wealth of knowledge. Wealth, yes. Get it? Oh, just
impressive.
We need a bit of humor these days, right? Like it's been too intense.
Oh my goodness. I was gonna ask, is there like a level of capital that you would like recommend a small business owner to like have before they start? And what's the timeline? You said a good accountant who's an advisor, not a filer, a banker, a lawyer, and a financial advisor were the 4 things that you said you needed.
Right.
Is there a certain timeline on those 4 and when you should bring them in? Because they all sound very expensive.
You ask great questions. I would probably say start off with the accountant because especially an accountant who understands your business, because they can help you figure out, because the capital requirements are very unique to the industry you're in, right?
Right.
So a small business who, like your side hustler might need way more capital than somebody that's setting up a manufacturing company. And they're going to be building stuff. And so if you have an accountant who's familiar with your industry, they can give you some ideas of what you would need to set this up. And then they can help you work through the business plan before you present it to the bank. So I would probably start with the accountant, then the banker, then the lawyer to set up the contracts if you're in a partnership, then the advisor.
Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering about that because I definitely, thank you. Because also I know lawyers can help with like tax time and stuff, right? Like if there's any loopholes or any deferments you can do.
That's the advisor. That's the
advisor. That's a good guy or a girl. That's a great person. Yeah.
And ask around. Like if you're a business owner, I've gotten the best accountants that I have my clients work with from other clients. And then I vet them that way.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
That's great, because we did say we would be talking about, the business, the finance side and the people side. And that is part of with the small businesses, who's that first person? And that's sort of where I keep thinking that, again, a side business, it's related to HR, but a lot of times businesses are, especially as you start out, you're wearing all those different hats and you don't have the time to get thinking about your people strategy and who should you be bringing as like officially not just outsourced, but then full-timers, and like thinking that through as you plan out and as you look forward.
I actually had that question, that answer to some of the things, because I think it's a great question for people who are starting off. I think this moment of the coronavirus, as I said, has really put like everybody on the reset button. And so if you're in the process of building your business again, like I said, very, very crucial to think about setting up additional streams of income for yourself. That's not all tied to your business, having either a complementary business, setting up investments, real estate investments.
Mm-hmm.
The average millionaire has 5 to 7 streams of income. And, I live by that. Like, how many income streams can I create? Passive income streams. Remember, this is a woman who worked really, really hard for 10 years and 3 jobs. So having my money work hard for me and having money work hard for you should be primary in your mind, because we realize in a moment like this where what we thought we knew about our business, what we thought we knew about our client base could just change overnight. So if you expect that uncertainty, if you set up your business with that in mind and start thinking about creating this fortress around your finances so that if something like this happens to you again, you're not going to be in the same situation. This is truly your moment to pause and reflect on how you can do that.
That's amazing. We might have some millionaires in the making on this call today. We'll see. We'll follow them. So first of all, I just want to say thank you. What a great chat we had today. really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your knowledge. And I love that we got to meet, and we'll continue to be in touch. And I'm taking a pause on the mentor circles for the summer and doing a reset with the team. We're going to be putting some strategy together and thinking about what to do in the fall. And it is interesting because I'm going in a direction that I didn't think I would. So it's
exciting.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? I'm a good experimenter, so I'm okay with trying some risk, right? And I'm actually at a good place, but when you said diversify and like that, that's good, because, we have a bit of real estate. You have to kind of, think things. I still have some product ideas. I don't know, that might be too risky, but.
You never know. Like I said, one of the reasons I created, and like I said, the Legacy Toolbox,
I can't wait.
Create this additional income stream for something I knew my clients needed.
Absolutely. I could use that. I'm telling you, and anybody, but also just even for, I'll put in a plug for one of our other colleagues Tracy Bissett, who has the Young Money podcast. I know she's amazing. And you two, I know are good friends and know each other, but if you want to listen to some finance, she has a great Young Money podcast. It's great. So any last words of wisdom before you go? And, what are you going to be up to besides that? And final parting words.
Honestly, I just think, thinking about future thinking to me is the most important thing an entrepreneur should be doing. Like, you should be thinking about what you want your future to look like all the time. So I'm excited when you say, we're thinking about some other things that we want to do, thinking about where you want your business to be in a year. Because I think that's the only way you can truly envision what you want your future to look like, is to start planning it out right now, and then you work backwards and then think, what do I need to put in place to have that happen? So future thinking is important in finance. Future thinking is important in business planning. Right now, personally, I'm thinking about my 70s and 80s, what I want that to look like, especially because of the coronavirus. Seeing how seniors are being treated in these seniors' homes have made me start thinking about what I want my senior future to look like and how I can change that. But the future you want is the future you'll have to create. So I really invite all of the women, all of the men on this show to create the future that they want, because that's truly what financially empowered means. It's taking responsibility for the future you want to have.
I love that. And that is such a great way to end it off today. And I hope you have a beautiful 50th birthday. So exciting.
Socially intimate by myself.
I know, no, we'll cheer you on Instagram or whatever, but we will. I'm so glad. And I hope to see you in person soon. And everyone else, thank you for joining today, and stay tuned for, over the summer, we'll let you know what's going to be happening in the fall. I can't wait to go for vacation next week for a couple of weeks. So take a little bit of time to unwind. So I hope everyone has a wonderful summer. And Jackie, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we'll be in touch. Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Oh, you're so welcome.